We both like to win. We both detested getting beat.
The love affairs I've had plenty because I've been with some tremendous football clubs.
There was nothing else at all in the whole world but football.
Welcome to Merseyside Legends, the tales and tapes with John Keith.
Callaghan out to Highway on the near side. Callaghan still running, making the overlap down the right. Highway cutting inside, trying to get it on his left foot. A great ball to McDermott, the shot, and McDermott has got it. Liverpool 1, Borussia Mönchengladbach 0. Oh, a great move, inspired by McDermott, carried on by Callaghan, and finished off clinically by Terry McDermott. Corner then for Liverpool, chipping it in, hit it low and hard. There's Smith. Oh, it's Tommy Smith. 2-1 to Liverpool. Well, fairy tales don't come more extraordinary than this. Tommy Smith, his 600th game for Liverpool, his last game for Liverpool, and he could have won the European Cup for them. Keegan, though, takes on Vokes and beats him. Keegan still going. Could he get the shot in? It's a penalty. Vokes, well, that was inevitable, the way Bertie Vokes has been marking Kevin Keegan. And it's a penalty. Phil Neal against Wolfgang Neeb. 8 minutes to go in the European Cup final. Here he goes, right-footed. It's there. Neal has made it 3-1. Liverpool have won the European Cup, surely.
It was the moment Liverpool Football Club and their fans had dreamed of ever since continental competitions began. The sight of the team from Anfield being crowned Kings of Europe. On the night of May the 25th, 1977, it became wonderful reality for the travelling Kop with a 3-1 win over Borussia Mönchengladbach in Rome's Olympic Stadium. And the man who masterminded it, Bob Paisley, sat in a cardigan at the team's hotel sipping lemonade as riotous celebrations were happening all around him.
I just wanted to savor the moment. That doesn't come often, and it was the first time the club had won the cup, and that was something special. But I wasn't begrudging them, but I wanted to have all my faculties about it and remember the day and what had been done. And, inwardly I was drunk, but I didn't take a drink. For the simple reason I just wanted to savor every moment. The thing that pleased me most was that Rome was a place that I'd been to during the war and that, and they had a particular fancy for the whole city and that, and the setting of the game and the weather, the supporters, they'd gone out there to enjoy themselves, and they were immaculate in the behaviour and the game and the performance that we did to win it. It was recognised throughout Europe, and that had to be the best moment of my life.
After retaining the league title, his side's FA Cup final defeat by Manchester United 4 days before Rome had ended their treble hopes. But the team's feat in shrugging off that setback to claim the biggest European prize thrilled Paisley as he spoke proudly in the dressing room within minutes of the final whistle.
Wasn't that just tremendous? Words fail me. I've got no voice, but tremendous. After coming off Wembley like they did, and then to put a show like that, tremendous. I think we did Britain proud tonight. I said we would, and I think we did. There's nothing wrong with British football, only our finishing. This is the only thing that's wrong with it, because if they want to play patient in that, we should do this with them in that. And there's nothing at all wrong with our football. I've said this all along.
Paisley even managed to smile, reflecting on the treble that wasn't to be.
It was possibly on. I mean, in fairness, we played West Ham on the Saturday. Then we played the Cup final the next Saturday, and then we played on the Wednesday the European Cup. So in a matter of 10 or 11 days, we'd had to play the 3 games. This is what people weren't getting, and this is why I rang a bookie and said, well, I'll give you 10,000 to 1,000, like, if you wanted it. Uh-huh. And I don't know where I would have got the 10,000 from, but
Some 27,000 Liverpool fans travelled to the Eternal City for the final, including other members of the Paisley family, as Bob's wife Jessie recalled.
The two boys went. They went by train, and my daughter-in-law. And I took them down to the station, so I saw all the excitement of the night when they were all when all the trains were pushing off there. And I remember saying to my daughter-in-law when she came back, what was the journey night? She said, long, and I never want to eat another cheese and cracker in my life. I couldn't go because I was teaching, and Bob didn't ask me to go because he knew I was as committed to teaching as he was to football. So I stayed at home with my other daughter-in-law, and we watched at night and shouted at the television instead.
Many in the Liverpool camp felt that the aftermath of the FA Cup defeat by Manchester United sowed the seeds of triumph in Rome, even as the players sat crestfallen in the Wembley dressing room. Here's Captain Emlyn Hughes.
But all just sat there, absolutely dead as a dodo, heads down, and Ray Clements just jumped up and he turned around. He said, well, I don't know about you, he said, but I'm going to get absolutely tonight. Meaning he was going to get very drunk. And you can imagine what he said. And that just broke the atmosphere, and he runs straight through the dressing room and he dived in the bath. And that second broke the atmosphere, and I knew we were going to win the European Cup after that.
British Rail also unwittingly strengthened the mental fortification process for the Liverpool squad. The club's 7:45 p.m. chartered train from Watford was delayed for almost 2 hours en route back to Merseyside due to a broken down train, and that extra time on board worked wonders for team spirit and morale, as Steve Highway remembers.
It was a riot, and we just lost the FA Cup final. And I can remember in particular a mammoth sugar fight in the compartment on the train. In those days, it used to be the little wrapped cubes of sugar, and we got this crazy sugar fight going between wives, players, and everything. Not the sort of classical reaction to just having lost an FA Cup final, but we really were in great shape.
Paisley confirmed the beneficial impact of the delay, saying, normally you'd be angry about a delay like that, but in our case it was a positive thing. The players let their hair down, and by the time we got to Lime Street around midnight, they'd well and truly got Wembley out of their system. When Paisley arrived back at his Woolton home, he did two things. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and picked the team for Rome. So this is how Liverpool lined up for the biggest game in their history. Ray Clements in goal, a back four of Phil Neal, Tommy Smith, Emlyn Hughes and Joey Jones, a midfield comprising Jimmy Case, Terry McDermott, Ian Callaghan and Ray Kennedy, with Steve Highway partnering Kevin Keegan up front. For Highway, known more as a winger, playing down the middle was a job he relished.
I used to enjoy those European days when Bob Paisley used to say to me, just go play up front, just run, just move, keep mobile, take people off Kevin, come back and help a little bit when you need to. And I enjoyed not having a direct confrontation with a right back, because through a first division season it's left winger against right back, and there's a bit of pressure in that. Playing up front, you can go and try and find a soft centre somewhere. You can keep probing around till you find a bit of success.
The 5 substitutes for Liverpool, remarkably none of them used by Paisley on the night, were reserve keeper Peter McDonnell, David Johnson, Alan Waddle, Alec Lindsay and David Fairclough. Fairclough, the prototype super sub, had played a starring role in getting Liverpool to Rome with one of Anfield's all-time magical goals to overcome Saint-Étienne in the quarter-final second leg. With the aggregate at 2-2 and the French visitors set to go through on the now scrapped away goal rule, Fairclough was sent on as a 73rd minute substitute for Toshak, with the simple instruction from Paisley to just run at them. Here's Elton Welsby telling Radio City listeners how Fairclough sent Liverpool through, followed by Super Sub himself telling us what he did.
And it really does look at the moment this time is going to beat Liverpool. Time and the away goal rule. Larke turning it in, Hervé Ravelli's there, Tommy Smith wins the aerial duel, and Jimmy Case gets it away down the middle. Too many long balls, I feel, by Liverpool, too many hopeful balls at the moment. There's another one from Kennedy, but that could break for Fairclough, in fact, and it does. Fairclough going through, and he scored! Oh, David Fairclough has put Liverpool surely in the semi-finals! Oh, and the place has gone star-raving mad! Just look at these scenes. Kennedy, who got the second, puts it through to Fairclough, the substitute, and Super Sub takes it on and shoots it low under Kirkovic. It's 3-1, and the drama at Anfield is quite unbelievable. Oh, Liverpool, don't lose your heads now.
I've gone up with the big centre-half Lopez, and I remember him sort of trying to tug my arm back, and I was sort of like shrugging him off, and, let go of me, let me have a go, and he wouldn't, so I had to shrug him off. I showed a little bit of force. I wasn't aware of what it meant to everybody. I had to say, well, I've got to get a shot in on goal here. I remember, and I can honestly say this, I remember saying to myself, just get it on target. Don't be clever, just get it on target. And that's what I did, kept it low.
The noise in Rome's Olympic Stadium as kick-off to the final approached had a distinct Mersey sound, as Captain Emlyn Hughes discovered.
And when we walked out with 5 minutes to go, there was no way we could have lost. It was impossible. I can't remember a chant of Mönchengladbach. It was just every part of the stadium, apart from one little pocket, was just a mass of red and white.
In the dressing room, Bob gave a bizarre but inspiring team talk. He told his players, "The last time I was in Rome was on the back of a tank in the Second World War when we entered the liberated city. I helped beat the Germans then, so you go out and do it again." With Bob's legendary predecessor Bill Shankly watching as a guest of the club, Liverpool swept into their task with gusto and were ahead through McDermott in 28 minutes, shortly after Rainer Bonhoff had crashed a shot against Clemence's post. It remained at 1-0 until half-time, but a brilliant strike by Danish winger Allan Simonsen equalised after 51 minutes, and only a superb Clemens save from Uli Stielike denied Borussia the lead. But it proved to be the turning point. From Highway's 64th minute left flank corner, Tommy Smith headed Liverpool back in front on his 600th appearance. The icing on the cake in Rome was provided by the energy of Kevin Keegan, playing his 323rd and final Liverpool game before joining Hamburg. Throughout the game, he tormented his marker and friend, Bertie Vogts. With 8 minutes left, Keegan set off on yet another run, aiming for his 101st Liverpool goal, only to be sent sprawling by the German defender, with French referee Robert Wirtz instantly pointing to the spot. Here's Keegan talking about their battle in Rome.
He tried to pull my shirt off after about 4 minutes. I can remember saying to him, no, Bertie, I said, in England we change shirts after the game. And at half-time, when he was coming up the tunnel, I said, do you want to come in this dressing room or are you going your own? I had a great rapport with him, which to this day is still there.
As the penalty was being taken, Ian Callaghan, the only player to appear in the old second division for Liverpool and progress to the European Cup final, squatted with his back to the action, his hands clasped in prayer. Well, if he couldn't pray in Rome, when could he? When Cally turned round, Neil had calmly beaten giant keeper Wolfgang Neeb to make it 11 out of 11 successful penalties for that season, and admitted he changed his usual direction of his kick, saying, "I assumed that as my previous penalties had been televised around Europe, and the keeper had no doubt done his homework, I decided to put my kick into the opposite corner, and with Need being so big, I'd keep it low. He went the wrong way, the ball hit the net, and I knew we'd won the European Cup.
8 minutes to go in the European Cup final. Here he goes, right-footed. It's there. Neil has made it 3-1. Liverpool have won the European Cup, surely.
Watching back home in Liverpool, Bob's wife Jessie observed that even her usually calm and collected husband had been moved by the occasion.
The main one I remember was the unusual picture of Bob jumping up and waving his arms in the air, which is most unusual for him, but that was, I think that was when, I don't know whether it was with Tommy Smith's header or when they did the penalty. It was one of those two, then when they practically knew they'd won.
That night, Liverpool's hotel, the Holiday Inn St Peter's, was awash with champagne and singing, players jumping and being thrown into the swimming pool. Bob Paisley sat up late sipping his lemonade while Chief Executive Peter Robinson repaired to his room and sat on the balcony looking out over the city, taking stock of what the team had achieved. As the dawn was breaking over Rome, I sat there, said Peter, and thought, here we are, a club from a city that's got so many economic, social and employment problems, a club that's not rolling in money compared to some, and yet we've become champions of Europe. It was quite moving to contemplate just what we'd done. If the triumph in Rome was the crown on Bob Paisley, the manager, there were more diamonds to be set upon it. A year later, with the arrival of Kenny Dalglish, again proving the doommongers wrong when they said Liverpool would never replace Keegan, the great Scots' only goal of the final against Bruges at Wembley ensured Liverpool became the first English club to retain the trophy. Bill Shankly was part of Radio City's commentary team that night to record Dalglish's great strike.
McDermott on the right-hand byline, chipped in towards Dalglish, near post, overhead kick, headed clear, only as far as Souness entered the penalty area, tries to make shooting space, might break for Kenny Dalglish, chips it in, 1-0, Kenny Dalglish scores for Liverpool, his 31st goal of the season. He hurdles the advertising barriers and goes to the ecstatic Liverpool fans at that end of the field, and Liverpool with possession and pressure for the entire game. 65 minutes gone, and Liverpool are in front, and Kenny Dalglish is the scorer. Bill Shankly, what about that?
Well, possibly the coming on of Stevie frightened the Bruges boys. Took some effect on them, you know.
Steve Highway hasn't had a kick. He's been on the field 30 seconds, and Liverpool are 1-0 in front. 80,000 Liverpool fans rise to Liverpool. They've won the European Cup final again. A second consecutive year. They've done it by 1-0 against FC Bruges, and Kenny Dalglish is their scorer. Bill Shankly shaking hands with many well-wishers. Bill, what a proud moment for everybody concerned with Liverpool.
Oh, it is. And this was no easy game. Liverpool had to work hard to win, and they did that. They've given Bruges a wonderful reception too. I mean, they must be saying, well, this is a fantastic crowd, which of course they are. So that the whole of, not only Merseyside, but the whole of England's behind Liverpool tonight.
And here's Dalglish, later Sir Kenny and twice manager of Liverpool, talking about joining the club from Celtic.
Obviously I was aware of Kevin. I think everybody was aware of Kevin Keegan, and total respect for what Kevin had done for Liverpool Football Club. But Kevin had chosen to move on. Someone had to fill his place, and if I wanted to come and play for Liverpool Football Club, I was going to come and play. It didn't matter what had gone in front of us. I felt as if I would be comfortable coming here. And the 5-minute conversation I had with Bob and John Smith, the chairman, that only endorsed what I thought. There was no problem coming to the city because it's similar to what the people of Glasgow are. There's a great sense of humour. There's a great bond between the Scousers and the Glaswegians. But I wasn't here to fill Kevin's boots. I had my own pair of boots to wear and I had my own job to do.
When Kenny's taken over in that, he'll have about 5 options. People move as though say, oh, Kenny's got it, I've got a chance of getting it. And this is happening in about 5 or 6 positions in that. And that he's able to do that. And not only able to do that, he'll sort the best position out. It's that natural ability that he's got. He just gets on with the job. A man that I look up to simply because of his attitude. He wants to play football.
A year after beating Bruges, Paisley celebrated another league title, which they retained in 1979-80, clinched with a 4-1 home win over Aston Villa. Notable for Avi Cohen scoring for both sides, an own goal in the first half and a Liverpool goal in the second. Left-back Cohen had been signed for £200,000 from Maccabi Tel Aviv a year earlier, and shortly after Cohen's arrival, Paisley received an unusual telephone call from the Jewish Chronicle, as he revealed.
It was quite true. The chap rang from Manchester, and he's from the Manchester Chronicle or something paper, and well, that's what he said anyway. He said, had I signed Avi Cohen on? And I said, yes. And he said, is he Orthodox Jew? So I said, oh, I wouldn't know anything about that. I said, I don't bother about, religion and that. But I said, what if he was Orthodox Jew? Oh, he said, well, he can't play on the Saturday. So I said, well, I've got 5 or 6 of them now. So
The following season of 1980-81 saw Paisley land the double of League Cup and European Cup, the 3rd time in 5 seasons he'd lifted Europe's greatest prize. The final was in Paris, and the opposition, Real Madrid. The fact that the game was settled by the only goal of the match from Alan Kennedy turned back the clock for Paisley, who knew Kennedy's mother when they were both youngsters in County Durham prior to World War II. Alan tells the story.
My mother used to remind me of the fact that she lived in a certain part of Hetton, and she was one of 7 daughters, and she worked in the local fish and chip shop. And she used to tell me that she used to get some important people who used to come in and order their fish and chips. And one of those important people, as they say in those days, was Bob Paisley. And Bob was always coming in for his fish and chips. Now, I'm not sure whether he only wanted fish and chips because I think he must have had eyes for either my mother or my auntie, and I wasn't quite sure which one he fancied, whether it was the older one or the younger one. I mean, my mother's family were very much into football. I think it was an important part of, I suppose, the community was to play football. And Bob was playing for his local teams, so my mother probably went along to watch him. My mother had just died when actually I left and went to Liverpool, so, she'd be very proud of me, the fact that I went to play for Liverpool. But Bob probably knew what sort of a person I was, knowing my family. And he decided to splash out all that money. I mean, it goes back, as you quite rightly said, to the 1930s and all the way through to the 1970s. And, I always felt Bob Paisley was like a father figure to me. He was a typical northeasterner who'd worked very, very hard and who would always have time to speak to you. I think he looked at the character of the person, first of all. My mother said, wouldn't it be nice, on a few occasions, wouldn't it be nice to play for Bob Paisley? And I often thought about that, and when the offer came in, not only from Liverpool, but there was an offer from Leeds United as well. They were interested in taking me there. There was only one place that I wanted to go.
While most of the players and wives headed for the Paris night spots after the match, Paisley and his boot room colleagues sat digesting the match in Bob's hotel room, as Graham Souness discovered.
Paris is a lively city at the best of times, but when the European Champions finals taking place, it was even livelier. It was full of Liverpool supporters. It was a big international city anyway, but there was lots to do afterwards. And as with all the cup finals, the wives would be invited. Well, my wife and Alan Anson's wife, they were both pregnant, so they didn't travel to Paris. So we were staying in the hotel. The rest of the boys were going out to one of the famous nightclubs there with the dancers, and they took the trophy with them. So Alan and I, once we had something to eat, we're just hanging around a hotel, and there was a few supporters hanging around a hotel. So we disappeared upstairs, and we ended up in Bob's room. And Bob, along with Joe and Ronnie, were sitting there. Bob had an old sweater on, had a couple of stains on it, and he had his slippers on because he had a problem with his ankle. His ankles, I think, from his playing days were a problem to him, and they always appeared to be swollen. He was complaining about them. And he was sitting there with a scotch in a dimly lit room, and that was his idea of celebrating. I mean, it wasn't any big deal, it was just another cup. And I think that night brought it home to me that how high his ambitions were. You know, I've won the European Cup, but we can do better than this.
Mark Lawrenson had a similar experience of Bob's predilection for a woolly cardigan and slippers when he signed for Liverpool 3 months after the Paris triumph in a £900,000 move from Brighton.
I signed very late on a Friday night after a journey back up from the Ariel Hotel in London with Bob, the old chairman, Sir John Smith, Peter Robinson. Jimmy Case actually was in the car and the driver, and we drove back, and it wasn't the greatest of conversations I've ever had in a car journey. And I sort of had a semi-medical late on the Friday night, and I stayed at the Atlantic Tower on the Friday night, and he picked me up the next morning, Bob, at 9 o'clock. And I was suited and booted, and it was like a big deal for me. And he turned up in his cardigan and his slippers, right? And this was the manager of the football club, probably the best in Europe at the time. And I just couldn't believe it. It was like your granddad was the manager of the team, and yet in the nicest possible way. He was such a knowledgeable guy and such a nice fella. And I mean, it was like a father to you, and yet you knew all the time he was a manager, and he had the greatest respect from all the players. And when you consider at the time, I mean, they had some fantastic players there at Liverpool, but they had the utmost respect for him.
Fittingly, Bob Paisley left the managerial stage with another league title and League Cup double in 1982-83, ending a journey beyond fantasy. When he was finally persuaded by Robinson and Smith to take the job, he told the players at his first team talk, "I'm only here till you get a proper manager." I think 19 trophies in 9 seasons more than qualifies Bob Paisley as a proper manager. His judgment of football talent, his tactical astuteness, his medical knowledge came in quantities beyond most people who have the word manager on their office door. So we'll end this podcast with 4 of his greatest signings talking about Bob's qualities, beginning with Mark Lawrenson on his genius for diagnosing injuries.
The famous Trevor Francis story, isn't there, when he'd been to watch Trevor Francis playing for Nottingham Forest and just said he's injured or he'll get an injury soon because of the way he runs, and sure enough he got a serious injury, and it was amazing. And again, he was, I suppose, a bit like Bill Shankly, that he'd come in the treatment room and he wouldn't really say a lot to you when you were lying there injured, and you'd sense this fella looking at you thinking, I know exactly how long you're going to be out for, and you're thinking, oh, it might be all right by Saturday and stuff. And he used to have the famous, if somebody had a hamstring or a strain, he'd just kind of look at it and go, 10-dayer, which meant that you were out for a minimum of 10 days, and there was no way you could possibly be rushed back beforehand.
And here's Alan Hansen beginning his tribute to Bob by saluting his remarkable conversion of Ray Kennedy from a League and Cup double-winning striker with Arsenal to a left-side midfielder praised throughout Europe.
Well, I think that was one of the best moves of all time, to put Ray into the left-hand side of the midfield. Nobody would ever thought a centre-forward could have played there. But Bob must have witnessed something that he thought, right, he can play in this position. And Ray Kennedy in that position was unbelievable for Liverpool, because right the way through the late 70s and when he played in the 80s, that position was vital for Liverpool, the way they played, because they were top heavy in the right hand side with Case and McDermott or Samuel Ian McDermott, and on the left hand side you needed somebody that could patrol that area and get up and down. And the thing about Ray was he was fantastic in the air, so anything coming that area he'd always win it. And I think, again, going back to, if you ever thought a centre forward like Ray Kennedy could play that position, you would say, well, no, you're off your head, you can't play that. But Bob saw something and played him, and I think that he turned it not only one of the best players that Liverpool had in that position, but a magnificent, reverse of positions that And you count over the last 25 years how many players have played in one position and been switched successfully to a position that was alien to them. I don't think you'd count many.
Graham Souness too was glowing in his appraisal of Paisley.
Without a doubt, the most knowledgeable footballing person I've ever come across. Where he was a man of few words, but when he did speak, and the things he spoke about, I mean, I worked with him for 6 years, and to say I learnt a great deal from him would be correct, but I think it was the way in which he got things across, the way in which he made his point. If you upset him, 2 or 3 people who did upset him, and they didn't stay at the club for very long after that. He knew who were taking the mickey out of him, and I don't think he minded that too much, but if someone upset him deeply, then I think he remembered that forever.
And completing a hat-trick of great Scots, Sir Kenny Dalglish pays his tribute to Bob.
It's certainly the way he treated me. He was superb, and I just like to think that he try and treat people the way that he treated me. As I say, I said a while ago that he's probably the greatest debt that I owe to anyone in football, was Bob. I don't see why I should change that.
It is highly unlikely we'll ever see a football man like Bob Paisley ever again. And like all those players who are grateful to have played for him, I'm grateful for having known him and reported on his great deeds. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and keep listening to more in this series, Merseyside Legends with John Keith. So from me, John Keith, and our producer, Ollie Cowan, goodbye.